welcome to the 30th episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I am just so stoked that we are at number 30. Very, very exciting. So I just moved. I'm still in Seattle, just in a new area, in a new apartment with a gorgeous view. Check out my Instagram to see it. And so I cannot find my USB plug for my microphone, so we're working with some AirPods today. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why I say audio quality is so important. I promise you the rest of this episode sounds a lot better than this intro. So, to continue season 2 of interviewing my friends, clients, and connections that I've made personally, I invited my client Jenelle Tremblett. She is a real estate agent based in Toronto, and she's also the host of an incredible podcast called the Ebb and Glow podcast. Jenelle has always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and when she realized she wasn't making as much as she could in life and realized that her 9-to-5 corporate life did in fact have a income cap, she found herself looking into real estate. She tells a story about how she actually got into this, and I think it's really interesting. And so Jenelle really has two business babies. She has her real estate business and her podcast. And we talk about a lot of things of navigating through the ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship. See what I did there? Her podcast, right? And we also talk about, she has a really extensive background in marketing. If you check out her website for her real estate and her podcast, she has two separate ones. They're both in the show notes. And also her Instagram for her podcast and her personal, they are very, very curated. They're very, very, on brand for her and the mission she wants. You could not tell that she is doing her podcast as a quote unquote side hustle. She puts all of her effort into it and it looks great. And podcast marketing and audio quality, as I mentioned before, are two of the most important things to seeing success. So, it's not hard to start a podcast, but it is hard to start a podcast that's going to gain attention. And that's just because there's so many other podcasts out there. So we talk a lot about how you can actually market it and make it stand out. We also talk about, of course, her story from employee to boss and how if you want to start a business, just start a business. Jenelle and I are both young and single and having fun in life. And so we talk about how, it's really our time to take advantage of that. And business does not always have to be as structured or as serious as we may have been told growing up. And I think that's a really important key takeaway from this. If you're getting into entrepreneurship, have fun with it. Do your thing. So let's get right into this episode with my client, Jenelle. And if you have any questions about anything we speak about, or if you just want to connect with us, definitely find us both on Instagram. I also have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful new website that you can find at espressopodcastproduction.com. All right, let's get right into the episode. Jenelle, I am so excited that you're here today. I would love it if you could just start off with introducing yourself and kind of telling the audience what you do.
Of course. So I'm a Toronto-based real estate agent and mostly in the condo market. I've been doing real estate for a year and a half. And on top of being a realtor, I'm also a podcast host. So my podcast has nothing to do with real estate. It's my other baby on top of real estate where I chat to everyone about life's ups and downs. So it's nice having two completely different parts of my life. And it's been really fun building them both over the past year and a half.
Absolutely. Especially because you are a realtor and that's so entrepreneurial. It's nice to have that outlet, that creative outlet, where of course, when you're a realtor, you have to build your personal brand. You have to do all your marketing. Like you have to do everything and you can get creative with it, but it's still within real estate. And so it's nice to have that outlet.
Mm-hmm. When people pick a realtor, ultimately every real estate agent has access to all the same things. You have different level of experiences, but ultimately you can swing it whatever way you want, but ultimately we are all offering the same thing. Ultimately, as a client buying or renting a home, you want to pick who you vibe with the most, who you feel that could best suit you and vouch for you and have someone in your corner. And when picking a real estate agent, people pick who they like, know, and trust. And
Mm-hmm.
if the only thing you have in your life is being a real estate agent, that's not that interesting. So I personally don't have kids. So I find a lot of real estate agents get clients based on who their kids are, and they open up networks that way. I find a huge talking point for me when meeting new clients is my podcast, and they're very intrigued, and I can feel them seeing me in a different light and thinking, okay, she's not just a salesy real estate agent. This is a person we're talking to that has a lot of depth to her, and I find it helps me with my clients a lot.
I love that. Real estate agents or even like therapists, I'm like, outside of the room, does my therapist even exist? And so it's nice to see, I don't know why I think like that, but it's
It's
really
true.
nice to see, you have this whole life outside of your job. I want to talk about how you got into entrepreneurship because you have a really extensive background in marketing. I was looking on your LinkedIn, like you were in marketing from your very first internship and then were
Mm-hmm.
directors and now podcast host and real estate agent. So what really pushed you to see this entrepreneurial side of yourself?
I worked a lot of my career in startups. So the nice thing about working for a startup is you have that salary that's obviously it's never huge by any means because you're working for startups, but you have that steady paycheck, but yet you get to work with a very entrepreneur head on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's really kind of following up with you. You run your own channels. You're like running your own business. It's very entrepreneurial. And I found by working at those companies, I realized how entrepreneurial I really was. And I worked in what we call growth marketing. So it was kind of sales and marketing. So I had targets to hit of like new acquisitions. And after doing that for so long and achieving targets and exceeding targets, I was wondering, I'm like, where's the incentive? Because when we do our end of year review, I might get a 5K salary raise or a 2K bonus that gets cut in half anyways. So it's like, what am I really working towards? What's the incentive to double my targets or exceed
Mm-hmm.
targets? And I realized like, I see where my motivations are. I am money motivated. And I'm living in a very expensive city and I wasn't making the type of money that I needed to be able to have the life that I want. And I also never had ever enough vacation to even go visit my family a lot. And I thought to myself, like, this is not the type of life I want. This is not sustainable. Even though I enjoy the job I'm doing, I don't see a path of where this goes that links up to the life that I want to have. So I thought to myself, I remembered kind of walking down the streets, and Toronto has been blowing up in terms of condo development for years and years and years. And I remember walking past one street and I saw a big sign outside this new condo development and it said starting at 500,000. And I mean, it's funny now that I say that number out loud, that seems so cheap to me because I'm like, it's all relative. I'm used to seeing these crazy big numbers of what
Yeah,
condos sell for.
I'm in
But I remember
Seattle, so
seeing
I
that
see
and
that all the
right?
time.
Something $500,000 in the city is actually not possible right now, which is insane. But I saw that because I was coming from just a marketing 9 to 5 background, and I saw that sign starting in the 500s, and I was like, I pulled out my phone, I did the math on that, and I was like, wait. If I sold that, that's what I would make in one deal. And I thought to myself, well, someone has to be selling this. Why not me?
Mm.
And that amongst with a couple other stories and things that happened in my life, I ultimately decided like I got to make a career change and let's do it. But that's what was big for me. Someone has to sell this. These condos are getting sold regardless. If it's not someone else, it can be me. So why not me? And that's
Mm.
kind of what led me down that path.
Yeah, I love that. What did the transition from corporate life to becoming a real estate agent look like?
It wasn't as hard as you would think, given that I worked for startups. So it was a lot of entrepreneur kind of skills that I already had. You have to be ready for the hustle when you work for yourself, no doubt, but especially in real estate. So, for instance, I like I woke up this morning and I opened my eyes and grabbed my phone like I do. That's not a good thing to do, but I do it, whatever. It works for me. I would be so anxious if I didn't have my phone for the first hour. I just want to see what's going to be happening for today.
Mhm.
So not that I respond to anything, but I want to wrap my brain around with what's going to be, what the day is going to look like. Anyways, 7 a.m. There's already texts coming through with clients wanting to see things. We're getting ready for the day. I was already on showings today. It's 1 p.m. here
Oh my
in
gosh.
Toronto. I've already been out and back again. And I just wrote my list of things that I need to get done after this call. I have about 4 or 5 offers that need to be getting put in today, amongst many other things. Like it's nonstop, Haley, nonstop. And you have to be okay with that. Now, there's some days, there's going to be a day next week where I have nothing on my calendar. It's going to be a random Tuesday. I'm going to have nothing. So being able to handle those like ups and downs of like the busyness, and then there's a lull, busyness, and there's a lull. It can be, if you can't handle that constant change, it's going to be tough. But I mean, as any kind of entrepreneur, when you are 100% solely responsible for every penny that you make, it can be extremely stressful, but it can be extremely fun too. So the transition, that part was hard, never kind of knowing what you're going to make every month, but there's no ceiling on it. So what you're used to making in a steady paycheck, you can make 10x that in a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's really exciting for me. And for me, seeing that potential, I can handle any slow month because I'm so excited about really, really big months. But yeah, to answer your question and to close that question out, the transition wasn't as hard for me as I would expect, but it's being in it now that I see the challenges every day.
Absolutely. No, I really like that. And you're so right. There's been months that my income has dropped by like $1,000, and that hurts. That hurts so much. But then like the next month or the month after that could be the biggest month I've ever had. And so really it is exciting seeing it's hard, like I don't have a family. It's just me and my dog just chilling in Seattle, right? And so that gives me a lot more freedom to have these ebbs and flows, like your podcast, Ebb and Glow. And so it definitely is cool to see. And I think the story is like a little different if you do have more responsibilities, but right now it's so exciting. And I've had other episodes of people who come on here and kind of talk about that stability standpoint. But you're my client, and I reached out to you to be on this podcast because I think we're in very similar parts of life of, figuring it out, still having fun with our businesses, and really not having to take anything too immensely seriously. We can pivot whenever we want. We can make some changes, whatever we want. Do you agree with that?
The word stability is the most unattractive word to me right now.
I love that.
So I don't know if that answers your question really easily, but I don't want to know what I'm making next week or next month. I want to be surprised to an extent because of the potential. I want to just I have a couple of friends that are also entrepreneurs that we all hang out. And one of my friends was telling me, she's like, stop thinking it as getting paid every 2 weeks or getting paid this month or whatever you're going to make this month. Just get up and do something today that's going to move the needle and the money is going to come to you. Like, stop worrying about what did I close this month out as? What did I close this month? She's like, stop looking at it that way. Mm-hmm. And you'll just release that kind of expectation and like that way of thinking. And as soon as I did, like I don't kind of question things as much because we can make a lot more money in another month and it'll all balance out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So you have a really incredible website and just your branding as a whole for not only your podcast, but also your Instagram and, your real estate business. You're on TikTok, you're starting your YouTube. I know you have this background in marketing, but can you kind of talk us through when you were starting your podcast, what you wanted to see in terms of marketing and what you've seen results in?
So when I worked in marketing in those startup worlds before, one of the channels that I ran the most, or one of the channels that I owned, was podcast marketing. So I knew everything about ad marketing. I knew what a good cover photo looked like. I knew what I wanted the audio to sound like. And I'm also an avid podcast listener. I've been listening to podcasts 6 to 8 hours a day since 2016. So, And that's when I'm doing the music, I'm like, nope, there's something off about that, like one little second. But because I'm so like type A about that, I will notice it. I don't think the average listener will notice it, but I will notice it and it will drive me crazy. So when I was putting together my podcast, I knew I wanted to be very clear about the branding and the vision and kind of the overall messaging. And I wanted there to be consistency. I wanted it to have a nice look to it. I wanted to look really professional. It's so easy to start a podcast right now. There's no barriers to entry. The same way as it's very easy to start a YouTube channel. It's very easy to become a real estate agent. You just get a license. Anything I'm doing right now, the barriers to entry are so low. So that being said, both as a real estate agent and as a podcaster, what are you doing a little bit more than everyone else to be able to show your audience or people watching what you're doing that you take this a little bit more seriously than everyone else? And for me, that was really nice for the podcast, especially. That was really nice cover art. That was a really good intro. It was really thinking about kind of the messaging and the branding and the overall theme and having that consistent theme. So yeah, I just gave a lot of thought to it. I didn't do that overnight. I put months of thought into it. I hired a designer to design my logo. I hired a photographer to get a really nice photo of me for the brand, for the cover art. I designed the whole website myself. Like I put a lot of time and effort into it. But now when people came across my podcast, they're going to open up the website or open up anything and even open up the Instagram and say, there's a lot of thought and strategy put behind this. And it makes people, I know for me, want to give it a little bit more time and attention because it shows that people are caring of what they're building. It's not just thrown together.
Yeah, I get on a lot of strategy calls with podcasters, and the two most common things that I have to touch on them with is their marketing, like what they're actually posting. If it's just like reels, but they don't have covers on their reels and it's just like the most awkward photo of their face, it's not going to convert well. People are not going to like be intrigued to click on that. And then the second most common thing is actually them showing up authentically. So like you're saying, there's a million realtors, there's a million podcasters. You have to show up as your authentic self because you are what sells your podcast. You're what sells your business. People listen to your show because they like you. People buy, what you list or work with you as clients because they like you. And so it's really, really important that you're actually showing up authentically in such a saturated field.
You're telling me, like I said, both fields that I'm in, no barriers to entry and very saturated. But I also don't believe in saturation as much because of such low barriers to entry that if you're willing to put in a little bit more work than the average person, it's actually not that saturated because there's actually not a lot of people really treating both podcasting and both real estate as a business.
True. That is true. Normally they see it as like a side hustle or something like that, which totally fine. You could do it as a side hustle, but my big thing is it shouldn't look like a side hustle. Even
exactly.
if
my podcast does not look like a side hustle, and it absolutely is.
Yeah, no, your podcast branding is amazing. Even if I was doing my business as a side hustle, I wouldn't want anyone to know. And so, especially like in the coaching field or any entrepreneurial client, service-based industry, you want to look like you're putting your all into it. And so definitely listeners, go check out Jenelle's Instagram and socials because you'll be able to see what she means by it does not look like a side hustle.
And it's also the consistency. There's so many people that jump into career paths and jump into something that they want to build and they give up in a couple of months. They get bored of it or life gets busy. And anything that you start, if you're serious about it, like treat it seriously. If you're a real estate agent, you're not just going to work once a day or once a week. It doesn't make any sense. Like, how are you going to build a business that way? Or if you're a podcaster, if you do an episode every now and then, like you're going to lose that momentum from listenership. So being consistent and doing a weekly episode. I've done a weekly episode now for this week will be 87 weeks. But now that being said, also don't become too hard on yourself. For instance, my schedule is to put out weekly episodes on Tuesday. Life got really busy this week and I still don't have that episode out yesterday. Today's Wednesday, but I'm almost done editing. I'll edit today and I'll post it today. So it's one day late, but it's still, I got something out. And so that's all that matters in my opinion.
Exactly. I always say I post my episodes on Tuesday, and as long as it's sometime on Tuesday, it doesn't have to be midnight. I can do it Tuesday at like 5 p.m. when I'm done with all my other
Exactly.
things. As long as it says Tuesday, no one knows.
No.
Like,
And
and even
I
if
used to
it's,
beat myself up over that, but now I don't anymore. But it's like just being consistent, just get something out there.
yeah, absolutely. Now, when I work with clients, I'm on it. Like, I'm on it. Their shows will not go up late. Like, it's going to be on it.
We always put
But
everyone before ourselves, always.
we really do. We really do. I want to talk about some of the opportunities that your podcast has opened you up to. I mean, you're able to talk to, you have 86 episodes. Some of those are solo, but the rest are interviews. And so, what have you seen the difference in your life and maybe your business since you started your podcast?
Simply networking. Like I've opened myself up to a lot of new people that I never would have met. So the types of people I'm interviewing people all over the world. I'm not interviewing people in Toronto. I'm interviewing people Australia, New Zealand, Ukraine, all over the US, all over Canada. And it's opened me up to, like I said, so many networks. And there's some people that I've interviewed, like I've become good friends with them that because they're a podcaster as well, we chat every now and then of like kind of bouncing ideas off each other. We never would have met if it wasn't for that. And then the other big thing that I've been doing lately is it's so funny. I worked in podcast ad marketing and I kind of like dabbled in a little bit of like affiliate ad marketing as ads on my podcast, but it just didn't feel authentic to me. I just like, I'm like, the amount of money I'm going to get from this, it's taking up prime time in the episode. And I just like don't really care. And it's funny. So I took those ads out for months and months and months, and I didn't have any kind of ads. And it's funny. I woke up one day and I thought, wait now, I work in a high ticket business. I sell real estate in Toronto. I'm a high ticket item. Why am I not just advertising myself? The fact that it took me so long to kind of clue into that, it was almost a year and a half into my podcast where I realized, wait, I can just put an ad on my own
Mm-hmm.
podcast for me as a real estate agent. And the fact that that took me so long to figure out is so funny. So I only been doing that recently for, I don't know, what is it? Probably for the last like 6 episodes. And
Mm-hmm.
basically right at the end of the episode, I just have a plug where it says, hey, if you've enjoyed this episode, just let you know I'm also a Toronto based real estate agent. If you or someone you know are looking to buy, reach out to me. And basically my pitch to that is, okay, you've just listened to a whole episode of me talking and you've learned my vibe of how I chat to people, how I converse with people. If you've enjoyed that, you will probably enjoy working with me as an agent.
Yeah.
And the way I see it, you don't know who is listening to your podcast. It could be someone in your city. It could be someone not in your city looking to move to your city, or someone knowing someone. Because someone's just spent an hour listening to your voice, that's a lot of time and attention that they just spent. They know who you are. They're getting a sense of who you are. And I realized like I was trying to figure out a way to monetize my podcast, and I'm not a life coach, so I can't really open people up to like my life coaching program. I'm not an author as of now, so I can't push people to courses or anything like that. But I thought to myself, okay, if over the course of a year, let's say over 52 episodes, I get one buyer that closes because they heard about me through my podcast, that's 15, 20 grand. If my
Mm-hmm.
podcast makes 15 to 20 grand in a year, I am in the top percentage of monetary value of owning a podcast. And like I said, I thought to myself, oh my God, why did it take me so long to think about this? But hey, I'm only a few episodes in with this little advertisement. But again, you never know who's going to listen. If one person converts like that, it's worth it to me.
You're in like such a busy area, Toronto. I mean, you really don't know who's listening. That's one conversation I have with so many people. I'm like, put your own commercials in. And they're like, oh, because we're so quick to take other people's money or promote other people's businesses that when it comes to our own, it's just like, it can be difficult for us to want to put ourselves out there. But by having a podcast and talking for 30 minutes, an hour, like you're already out there. You know, you already are gonna send them to your social media. For me, maybe I'll put my commercial like right here, but I always put my commercials in for my courses. And, you know, not every episode sells a course, but some do. And that's just what I'm looking for. Do you want to start growing your business rapidly in a really fun way? Do you want to increase your visibility and profits? I have just the thing for you. My course, Great Guesting: How to Grow Your Business Through Being a Podcast Guest, is now available, and it's guaranteed to get you on podcasts. Do you want to connect with more clients, share your story, make stronger connections, and grow your audience? But do you find that you're second guessing yourself, are indecisive on a topic because you're into so many things, and thinking, is this even possible? You'll love this step-by-step guide on how to be a podcast guest. We go over 6 lessons that are knowing your story, narrowing down the topic, finding podcasts to be on, setting up your audio, preparing to record, and of course, marketing, because that's what I'm all about. Being a guest can be fun, but if you don't have a plan to go with it, you're really just spending the hour talking. You're not moving your business forward, and that's exactly what this course is designed to teach you. You can find this course on my website at Espresso Podcast Production, and I guarantee you that you will be a guest on podcasts in no time.
Exactly. Yeah. Top tip, if you have anything that will advertise, or if you have any other parts of your life or other side hustles or other passive income sources, use your podcast as a way to send people that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also want to talk about, we've been working together for, I want to say, oh my gosh, I don't know, maybe like 3-4 months. I love working with you because your podcast episodes are always so unique and interesting. And if I enjoy editing them, then I'm a happy person. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the process of working with me and kind of like what your takeaway from it was, because I know you used to spend a lot of time on your podcast.
So I was listening to a totally separate podcast the other day, or maybe it was a book or something. I was listening to something, and it was basically saying the moment you stop getting joy out of doing something is the moment that you have to start delegating it. Mm-hmm. For the first 60 episodes, I loved editing my podcast. Like, I used to look forward to like being done real estate for the day to be like, ooh, let's edit my podcast and get it all ready and tie the bow on top and post it. By the time I probably got to episode 60 or whenever you started, I dreaded it. I dreaded it to a point where I thought, do I even want to continue with this podcast anymore? And to be transparent, I don't make money from my podcast. Like, it's absolutely a creative pursuit to build into something bigger, longer term. But I thought to myself, if I'm not making money from this, it's very easy to let it go. And then I thought of even a crazier idea. Why don't I just spend more money? So I thought to myself, okay, I'm not getting joy out of the editing, but I absolutely love the interviewing. And I love every other aspect except the editing now. It's time to delegate. And so once I found you, and once I basically handed that part off, I noticed myself having more joy for my podcast because I got that little part out. But yeah, I would dread it every Sunday night, being like, oh, I got to edit it. But I thought to myself, if you're dreading that aspect, there's someone out there that loves doing that and is willing to do that for a ton of people. And that's their full-time job. They do that. Find that person. And so I searched and I found you, and to think the amount of the hours that I gain back every week to put into real estate or to put into other parts of growing my podcast thing. If I didn't hand that off to you and delegate that to you and pay you for that service, I wouldn't have started a TikTok for the podcast. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be creating as much content as I would be. I wouldn't be able to sit down and have really good solo episodes because I would be too drained. So if you're seeing stagnant growth in whatever you're building right now, and you feel like the joy is being sucked out of it as well, it's time to delegate something so that you can regain that creative, passionate vibe of whatever you're building.
Yeah, that's how I love to work with clients. You know, I don't work with anyone who I don't connect with. And if I don't love the topic, I can't work with them because I want to be as invested in my client's success as they are, honestly.
Yeah, amen to that. I feel that even with my own real estate clients. If I don't really like hanging out with you, then I'm not going to do a good job for you.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I want to talk about some tips that you want to share with the audience today. This is how I close out the end of like every episode of, I really want you to share 3 steps that people can start with today to maybe start their business or get into the entrepreneurial industry or maybe real estate, whatever it may be, what would you encourage people to do?
How about I answer it this way so we can stay on theme for your podcast? If you are an employee right now and eventually want to work for yourself, these are 3 things that I would recommend doing. First, start your side hustle or start the business on top of your full-time job. And the reason why I say this is you do not want to put the financial pressure on something that you're just starting to build. You will lose all passion for it. You'll just hate it. So use the times. I always say you have a 9 to 5, but what are you doing from 5 to 9? Are you watching Netflix? Are you just hanging out with friends? Use that time to start building the life that you want if you're looking to pivot in that way. And you might only just want to build a little lifestyle business, just as something to have on top of your full-time job. Just start it. Start it outside of your full-time job and build it at the same time. Secondly, just start. You have to start something. So many people get procrastination and caught up in perfectionism. They're like, oh, well, I don't have a full website built yet. Oh, I don't have all the resources and tools I need. I still don't even have all the resources and tools I need. And I'm 87 episodes in to a podcast, and I'm a year and a half into real estate. I want new business cards. Still don't have them. I don't have business cards with my face on it. But if I waited 6 more months until I got those specific business cards, my goodness, I would never have gotten started. So you have to start and then edit and pivot and change things afterwards. So for instance, for my podcast, I'm on cover art number 2 within a year and a half, and I'll probably do another 3rd cover art probably by the end of the year. You can edit afterwards, but you just have to launch something and get it up and going. And then 3rd, do not listen to people that don't have the life that you want. If you're looking to become an entrepreneur and looking to do that type of life, only get advice from other entrepreneurs or people who have already done it before you. Don't ask the person sitting near you in your office making $40K less than you advice on how to start a business. What? That doesn't make any sense. Only ask for advice from the people that are already living the life that you want.
I love those, especially that last one. I feel like it makes so much sense, but I haven't thought about it that way. Where like I won't intuitively go to someone who doesn't have the life that I want, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, your net worth is very much linked to your network. So if you want to make a lot more money, start looking around at the people that you spend the most time with and chat to the most, and remind yourself the type of income they make. That's probably the type of income you'll also make. And it goes the same way. If you're single and you want to be in a loving marriage or a loving relationship, and you're only hanging out with your single girlfriends, start hanging out with your married, happy friends, and you will attract a partner into your life.
I love that. I love that a lot.
I'm only hanging with my single friends lately because that's what I want for me right now.
I mean, it's summer. Who's trying to fall in love, right? Well, I've loved this conversation with you. Is there anything else that you want to add?
I would say if you're sitting and listening to this podcast and you're really thinking about if you want to take that jump from employee to boss, don't make that decision lightly. It's a long-term commitment. You will actually work a lot more than you do right now. And you probably won't you think you're jumping into entrepreneurship because of the flexibility and make your own hours, but it often means a lot less work-life balance for at least the first few years. So if you're not willing to sacrifice a lot of what you have in your life today, it might not actually be worth it.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people connect with you?
The best place to connect with me is probably my Instagram, Jenelle_Tremblett. And then my podcast is called Ebb and Glow. And you can find that on Instagram. It's just Ebb and Glow podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I've loved this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.